Okay, so this video is really going to talk about how to conduct a systematic search of the literature. You can now kind of do this because you have got to a stage where you have conceptualized your research questions, you've looked at the areas that you want to look into, and you should have been able to break them down into the variables. But anyway, we'll be able to go through that today and highlight really the importance of being able to identify and break your research question down into its variables and the most important parts of it if you were to rank them. So we're going to start off by looking at my exemplar research question. So just an example for you. So how does external modeling during a design task affect cognitive load? So this is my initial research question. So this is the very same activity as we did in last week's tutorials. This is a good recap, and it puts it into context when you're actually doing your search for the literature in the different databases. So the independent variable in this is external modeling, and the dependent variable is cognitive load, because what you're trying to do is see if there's a change in external modeling, does that mean that it affects cognitive load? So you're systematically changing the independent variable, and you are seeing the change that comes about in the dependent variable. So the hypotheses are kind of not so much irrelevant, but not something that we need to talk to right now. So we're highlighting here that cognitive load and external modeling are the two important variables. Now, if you've talked about a research question, you've come up with a research question without really thinking about a huge amount in terms of the variables, what you can do is just break down your research question into the variables, and it'll become pretty clear pretty quickly which are the most important aspects of your research question in terms of the variables. And your research questions will not all look like this. This is just an example. Some might only have a single variable in terms of looking at how it might, in terms of investigating it further and trying to find out more about that specific phenomenon or something. But if we start off with the question at the top, and then we look to try and extract whatever we can from the research question without taking too much away bit by bit. You see I can take away how does, so it turns it away from a question. Basically looks at essentially what is the question asking. It's talking about external modeling during a design task affecting cognitive load. That's basically what it's talking about. And if you were to take away further, you'd be talking about taking away during a design task, because you're talking about external modeling essentially just affecting cognitive load. And then when you take away the affecting aspect of it and the interaction between the two, you're just talking about external modeling and cognitive load. Whereas these other aspects up above are important as well. Just get down to the very base of your question, and what is it actually that you're looking at? You're looking at these two together, but you're looking at these two separately and independently as well. But really what would be great is if we could find literature that brings these together and kind of informs our study or informs our paper. So what you do when you're conducting these searches is you don't just use the word that's in your question, because that is just one specific type of terminology that you can use for that particular variable, but there's other ways that you can look at it as well, and how also might people use this, or how could people describe this. So for example, external modeling can also be seen as worked examples, can also be seen as cognitive offload, can be seen as externalization, and can also be seen as concrete examples. So you're seeing external modeling as a process in terms of cognitive offload and externalization, but you're also seeing it as in a kind of a manifestation in terms of worked examples and concrete examples. And then they're just synonyms in terms of they're the same thing essentially, or they're just around the same thing as our variable that we're looking at specifically in this. So it will not exclude any papers that may also include these which may be related to what we're looking at, and that will become more clear as we do our search. Cognitive load is another one. I've used the synonyms of mental effort, cognitive demand, task load, and working memory capacity. So these again are kind of in and around the area, not exactly the same thing, but in and around the same area in terms of my experience in terms of reading papers into this. Sometimes they talk about these in the same way. Sometimes mental effort and cognitive load are interchangeable in some respects. Okay. So when we look at this, then well, where you're going to be doing your searching is going to be through the library, and you can log into the library when you're at home. You don't necessarily need to be in there, and you can search the library resources with this, and you can either do a generic search of all the resources that are available to the library in a tertiary sense, or you can do it in terms of getting to a database that the library has access to, getting into that database, and then conducting a systematic search, which is what I would recommend. Although I would not say not to I wouldn't put you off doing this as well. You could still find some relevant research that you might not necessarily get in a database either. Also, Google Scholar and ResearchGate are important for this, but in terms of the databases through the library, we'll be mainly looking at EBSCO. So we'll go into the library website, and you'll be asked to log in, and that's okay. Sometimes it takes 2 goes to work. Okay, and here you are going to select search for a database, and you're going to, because we're talking about education and research, we're going to talk about EBSCO. Well, not necessarily because of that, but EBSCO is a database that has a huge amount of other databases within it. So it's a massive base of data. What you're really looking at in terms of education is ERIC, this one here. That's the educational one. So what you do here is it says it's asking you to choose the databases that you would like to search. So these are now databases, but this is a database of databases. So it's a massive collection, and you're ensured, you can be kind of very certain that you'll get a lot of articles that will be relevant to your paper from this. So if you go down and look at, for example, education full text, have a look at the databases that are available and see if they are relevant to you. ERIC is relevant to me. And because I'm looking into a multidisciplinary area in terms of cognition and cognitive psychology, I could look at PsycInfo and Psych articles as well. And then I could look at UK and Ireland Reference Centre. There's no harm in putting in that either, in terms of reference books and such. Okay, so I'll say continue to that. Now, what happens here is it asks you what you want to search, but this isn't just simply the same as searching for one thing at a time. It can combine searches in a systematic way, and this is what I mean by a systematic search. So what we can start off by doing is putting in external modeling. Because I'm putting in quotation marks, it's just a term, it's just looking for that term, that whenever it says external modeling, it's looking for that term. And this is going to be very low, because that's the one paper that I get for that, because external modeling isn't necessarily a commonly used term in terms of the way that we're looking at it in terms of a design task, and it hasn't been looked at in specific a way in terms of research like that. Or some of the articles that have looked at it are maybe not on this database, the ones that I've read. Okay, but what's interesting is that this comes up here as search one. So we can change this then to cognitive load, and keeping it within the quotation marks, that means that it'll just search for terms with cognitive load, and this will come up with around 6,000. So it takes 6,188 papers. So that's search 2 then. Okay, so what I can do then is I can add in to my cognitive load one, I can say that I want to add in my synonyms now, and my synonyms are back here. Okay, so these are my synonyms. There we go. Okay, so I can add in these now to cognitive load. So cognitive load are mental effort, or cognitive demand, or task load, or working memory capacity, Okay, so those are all my synonyms for cognitive load as well, and this should more than double the search results that I get for this. So yes, it has. So 13,227 results with all those synonyms in there as well. Now, a bit of explanation behind using R. Why did I put that in there? Well, R is in there to say that I can, when you're searching, you can either have cognitive load or mental effort or cognitive demand or task load or working memory capacity. So it's saying that basically give me everything that has these terms in them, or in the titles and in the abstract, depending on what you want to search. Usually the titles and the abstract is what's searched for, so that it's including all of those terms, so it's not excluding any there. What happens when you want when the exclusion happens when you're talking about and we'll do that in a second after I sort out my external modeling and its synonyms. So what I can do here is I can select my external modeling and then say R, worked examples. Okay, so that's all I need for this. So I can search for that. And you'll see now that S1 comes up with as a search with that. Or it should have come up with a search as a search with that, but it didn't. Okay, but I can just edit that anyway. And then go into external modeling. And save. Okay, so now it's changed that for me. So now I actually have that as that. Now, so what I've got now in my S3 and my S4, I have my cognitive load and its synonyms, and I've also got my external modeling and its synonyms. So I can combine them, but I can combine them by either selecting, say, I want to search with or, I want to search them with and. So what or does, it says, give me everything. So selecting with or here wouldn't give me anything much more than I already have. I already have all of the cognitive load ones with its synonyms, and I also have all the external modeling papers with its synonyms. So selecting R would not be logical at all, unless I wanted to have them all in one list. But I don't want to have around 16,200 in my list. So what I need to do is select and, because what this does is it just says I only want results that have external, for example, external modeling and cognitive load, or external modeling and mental effort. So it's drawing as much links in between these as possible, and that's what it's giving me as results. So it has to have one from this and one from this, any one of them, but it has to have one from both. So I'm going to say search with and that'll give us our S5, which will be made up of S3 and S4 together. So now I've got 309 papers that are relevant to that. So that's particularly effective in reducing the amount of papers that I need to work with. Okay, so and I'm even looking at the actual titles of the papers that I'm looking at right now, and these are all relevant. So rethinking the boundaries of cognitive load theory and complex learning. So cognitive load is there. So work examples is here. When working memory matters as well, so we're talking about working memory and work examples. You would think that it would be looking at the capacity of working memory. So it looks like that these are actually relevant. Okay, so the top one is very relevant. Cognitive load theory and the use of worked examples as an instructional strategy in physics for distance learners. So this is exactly what you're looking for. Okay, so what I can do now that I've got this is I can go through these and say, yep, from the title, that is particularly relevant. From this title, it's not particularly obvious that it's relevant, so I'm going to say no to that. How to combine collaborative scripts, heuristic work examples to foster working memory matters. Okay, so it's got both of my search terms in there, so I can say that that's relevant for now, even though I'm not too sure. And then rethinking the boundaries of cognitive load theory in complex learning. So I can add that there. So using this here, you see, puts it all in a folder. So I can go into the folder and I can see that I have selected these papers as particularly relevant. And when I have selected those papers as relevant, I can export those or save those as files, but I can also see the full PDF of these. And I can usually see the full PDF of these papers within EBSCO, although sometimes I can't, which means you're going to have to get into the article finder, which brings you back to the Glucksmann library. And that's okay, all you have to do is sign in again, and it'll bring you straight to the paper and the full text of that paper. So that is basically what you're looking to do. And what you'll be doing is you'll be conducting your literature searches based on this format. What it does is it refines the process a huge amount for you, and it gives you extremely relevant papers based on the research question that you create. So this highlights the importance of having a very well structured and well defined and relevant research question to what you're talking about.